lecture for the paper project. With this particular project, I want you to focus on the idea of formal elements of design. So you're going to be using basic shapes like cubes, squares, rectangles, triangles, pyramids, isotetrahedrons. That tends to be a lot of the favorite shape for a lot of this project. And the idea is you're going to be using your shape with the design elements of repetition and scale. So I want you to think about what happens when you have different relationships of large and small, and also thinking about the idea of different types of shape and kind of how they work together. So we're going to look at various different artists and how they're interpreting shape in order to create paper sculpture. So, but before we look into artists, two things that we are going to talk about with this particular project, and that's how to make it. So, in order to come up with a rough sketch with this project, you will watch the demonstration on the program Tinkercad. Tinkercad is an open source program where you are able to create different 3D models, and there is a library of shapes. So you can literally drag and drop all of these shapes and kind of collage them together to create an assemblage or to create kind of a sketch of a sculpture. What's really nice about the Tinkercad program is it's free and it's open source. So that means you don't have to download it onto a computer. It can work on a computer, it can work on an iPad, it can work on a cell phone. I've gotten it to work on my cell phone. We also have different labs that you can use on campus in order to work on the project. So Tinkercad's going to be the first thing you're going to use in order to work on your ideas. So I'm looking for 3 sketches using that program. And what you can do is you can show me the models either off your phone, an iPad, or a computer, or you can even take screenshots and create printouts. So that way we can talk about your idea when you come in with your model sketches. So Tinkercad will be the first way to generate it. The second way we're going to create the physical version of these sculptures is we're going to be creating templates in paper. So I have an arsenal of different shapes that I have available for all of you. So you can take the different templates and you can use a program like Photoshop just to kind of manipulate the size that you would need for your design. And you can simply just print them out. You know, we're using cardstock paper, so you can easily run that through a printer and get the template you need. And then from there, you will cut and glue your paper together in order to create your sculptures. So with the paper project, paper is a really great material because it's easily accessible. It's relatively inexpensive, unless you're going into really specialty made type papers. And it's really versatile as a medium. You can cut it up, you can make it really thin, you can use thicker papers to make something like a little bit more bulky. There's a lot you can do with it. There's several artists that are using paper in various different ways, where it's even super delicate. Like there's a lot of people that'll hand cut paper to make it really thin, or use technology to their advantage, like using tools like a laser cutter in order to create something really intricate. So, but in our case, we're going to be doing it a little bit more in the analog method, where we're using Tinkercad to plan it, but then we're going to be physically working the material by using the paper and the hot glue and utility knives and X-Acto knives in order to create our pieces. So this piece here, this is various isotetrahedron shapes. So isotetrahedron, it's kind of like the dice that you would find in like the Dungeons and Dragons game. A lot of people tend to really like this shape. So and it has a really easy template to kind of work off of, so you can get these really beautiful shapes out of that. Other things you can think about too is you can use shape using negative space. And, this particular artist kind of created this beautiful sculpture using smaller shapes in order to gradually build up to a larger shape. And, it's really emphasized by that negative space. You could also see the artist also put like a secondary layer down here to create another element. Here's some more examples of different interpretations of the paper sculpture using both positive and negative space, similar to the piece that we previously looked at. And, these kind of, for the exception of the two on the right, this one kind of is more of like a sphere shape. So this particular artist is really thinking about, sculpture in the 360, in the round, so what happens if you view the piece in total. 2D pieces tend to think of work as like kind of a window or kind of like a voyeur. Whereas 3D pieces, you're really thinking about the idea of space, scale, and the interaction between the person and the viewer. And artists that are working kind of in larger scale like this is all paper. This is Joris Cooper's. And thinking about like how it can, affect the viewer looking at this piece. So the beauty again of using paper is paper can really be a versatile thing. So in this case, Joris Cooper's is making something that's not rigid like these particular pieces here, where structure is something that's really important. Joris Cooper's uses paper in a way where it's a little bit more soft. They almost kind of feel floral like. So, depending on how you work the material, it can have a different aesthetic with the way you approach it. So, and another artist that's doing that too is Danielle Popley, where she's creating kind of paper in like a little bit more of a soft, feather-like way. So, again, the way you work the material and the way you work the shapes can really change, what the piece is looking like. So, at the end of the day, you really have to think like, what kind of aesthetic are you interested in? How do you want the viewer to think about your work? How do you accomplish that within the confines of the assignment? So, if you want something that's kind of like warm or inviting, maybe you take a note from Elish Victoria, where she's using things like color that, is really kind of bright and warm and vibrant in order to bring the viewer in. Or do you want something that's kind of like a little bit more of a strange, like organic, kind of oozy like aesthetic, like Crystal Wagner here. So Crystal Wagner, this entire piece is made out of paper for the exception of these string-like elements here. But, she was really, again, able to work the material in such a way where it really changed the overall look of it. So, this piece isn't structural. It's very organic, and she's got a couple different like blob-like forms. She's really interested in like organic biology, and that's kind of why a lot of her work comes out like this. And she actually makes a lot of large-scale sculptural pieces, and they're all made out of really basic materials like chicken wire, and she uses tablecloth plastic oftentimes. So she'll go to various dollar stores and flea markets and find like really brightly colored tablecloth plastics and create these large installations. But Crystal Wagner initially started off as a printmaker. So all the paper that you see here in the piece, she printed those. So she used silkscreen printing, which is the method that Andy Warhol was really famous for using. And it's good for bringing out like really large blocks of color. So she prints on her paper and then she makes sculpture out of them, which is really interesting. And this is the last artist I have for you with this particular PowerPoint. So again, be sure to go ahead and check out the Tinkercad demo and then take a look at some of the templates that will be on Blackboard